Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Tone is here, despite saying that they're not gonna be. So that's kind of weird. What's up, Jason? What's up, Pia? Hello. Hi, Jake. Nice to see you. Bretta, what's up? Brian Loves Beans is my new favorite YouTube channel as well. So definitely follow them. Rich, what's up? Hello, friendo. Louis, hello. Hi, Zinflay, thank you for saying hi. And who else? Did I miss anybody? The vegan anthem, be careful. This is your last warning. All right, let's start. Let's start the stream. Joe, what are we doing today?
Today, we decided to go over cognitive biases. Very fun.
Yeah. So let me just share my screen 1 second. There you go. So cognitive biases, and I'm going to do it like that. Cognitive biases is a systematic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment. Individuals create their own subjective reality from their perception of the input. An individual's construction of reality, not the objective input, may dictate their behavior in the world. Thus, cognitive biases may sometimes lead to perceptual distortion, inaccurate judgment, illogical interpretation, and irrationality. So, Joe, what would be the reason for us to talk about this?
Yeah, so kind of a little story. My wife bought these cards that we found online. I think it was actually an Instagram ad. They're called logical fallacy, cognitive biases cards, and I actually have them in person.
Yay.
And yeah, they're for free online as well, but it's kind of fun to go through them and kind of learn about these logical fallacies and cognitive biases to avoid them in your own reasoning, but also to identify them when other people are making them and to correct the error.
Yeah, so we're just trying to reach a place where we think better, don't we, Brian? Oh, sorry, Joe. Brian got stuck in.
That's my middle name.
Oh, Joe Brian. Holy shit.
Oh no, not Brian. Ryan. Sorry. No, I am not Brian Loves Beans. I am Joe Loves Beans.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I got mixed up.
That's my new channel.
True. Let me just hide that a little bit. That's cognitive bias. All right, let's start with a new one. What's up, Cheap? Hello. Who's is here? Suspicious Cactus. What's up? As well. Just world hypotheses. Joe, start us over.
Sure.
Up. Yeah.
So I think the way we'll go through this is we'll just read the cards and then see what discussion ensues from that.
All right.
So the just world hypothesis is your preference for a just world makes you presume that it exists. A world in which people don't always get what they deserve is an uncomfortable one that threatens our preferred narrative. A more just world requires understanding rather than blame. Try to remember that we're all fallible and that bad things happen to good people.
Did you know that your card doesn't match the site? Different text.
Oh.
That's all right.
I didn't.
No worries.
I didn't know that. That's good to know.
Yeah. That's okay. I think we understood. So I actually did like a video many moons ago that was predicated on just world hypothesis, or not just world fallacy, in fact. It was talking about killing the messenger. And I made the connection to vegans being hated and despised and like dogged upon because we are the messenger of bad news. And in the paper that I was going through for this video, the just world assumption was a strong reason for why people hate messengers, basically. It's because they assume that the bad thing that the messengers deliver just couldn't have happened because the world is just.
Yeah, that was exactly my thought going through this one was it's a a lot of carnists are holding this bias because, they're resistant to change. And, how could this thing I've been doing for 20, 30 years be not just? I must, they're not going to be the ones doing the bad thing.
Yeah.
In their own mind.
So let me ask you, do you know if the just world hypothesis only applies to the people themselves? Like, it can't be that I'm doing a bad thing, or does it apply to other people as well? It can't be that that person is doing a bad thing.
Yeah, I guess that could probably be applied to friends and family and whatever culture they're in.
Yeah, more of a in-group than the out-group, I think. The out-group, I think it's almost the opposite sometimes. The out-group being a group that you disagree with on whichever thing. So it probably would be like the opposite. You would probably assign motivations to that group that they are like really bad. All of them, all of those people are so bad because you don't agree with them, kind of situation.
Yeah, it's just, I remember when I was pre-vegan, we always used to kind of try to buy the humane washed stuff.
Oh, you bought the locally sourced, Joe.
Yep, and we were like, this is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing good. We live, yeah, and it was like kind of just this bias in our head of, yeah, this must be legit. Like, why else is it in the grocery store? This has to be fine, right?
Yeah. One thing I don't actually know is how to wake people up from this just world hypothesis kind of situation. Do you scream at them? Do you yell at them? Do you call them animal abusers? What do you do?
I think it's probably good. I've seen Justin do this, debug your brain. Always looking back in history and asking, can you think of any other times in history where people thought the status quo was fine or just, and should there have been change? And it's pretty easy to think of examples off the top of your head. And then I think it's definitely a reasoning error to assume that, we live in a utopia right now. And maybe another way to go about it is, everyone votes for change on every ballot that they vote on. And clearly they think things should change.
Wait, so everybody votes for change? Because some people definitely vote for things remaining as they perceive them, as they are.
I guess that is called conservatism.
Yeah. Or conformism. Conformity.
But I think if you ask people, I have an intuition that if you were to ask a bunch of people on the street, is there anything in society right now that you would change? I think most people would say yes. So you can just kind of extrapolate that to any other injustice that's happening. Is like, yeah, so you do agree that like we don't live in a perfect world right now and things should probably change. Mm-hmm. Or not even bring up veganism if that's the discussion that you want to go into, but on the next ballot, are there any issues that are important to you that you want to be changed? And then just that alone would maybe help click in their mind that, we don't live in a just world. I do want change.
Mm-hmm. My screen just went a little green. That's okay. Anything else to say? Do people understand what the just world hypothesis is? Maybe we can put one in the chat if it's kind of clear. Put two in the chat if we should like define it in like somehow else. Please. Put one in the chat if you understood what just world hypothesis is. Jason didn't understand. Joe, so can you say it in a bit of a more like normative like language, what the just world hypothesis is?
Basically, it's just you have an assumption that things are peachy right now.
Like
and like your actions, your behaviors aren't really causing any harm or anything like that. And when someone tells you that you're doing something wrong, you kind of assume that they're incorrect because, the world is just
Another
as it is
thing
right
that
now.
is like really, really important to mention here to keep hope of humanity, right, is that people use the just world fallacy, I think, because they prefer the world to be just, right? That's what it says right there on the top. And that's what the research about killing the messenger was about as well. People want the world to be good and according to their morals. And that's why they assume that the world already is, that their actions already are, right? Yeah?
Is that making more sense, Jason?
So it's a bit like it's illegal, therefore it's legal, therefore it's okay. Well, the opposite, kind of, right? So the assumption is that everything that we do is good by nature and adheres to our morals. It doesn't have anything to do with legality in this case. It is a moral hypothesis. Justice is a moral concept at its inception, I think. Right. Hey, what's up, Jeremy? Hello, Alicia. Okay, let's continue then. So, reactance. Let me read this one out. You'd rather do the opposite of what someone is trying to make you do. Oh, that one is familiar to me. I sometimes do that, definitely. When we feel our liberty is being constrained, our inclination is to resist. However, in doing so, we can overcompensate. While blind conformity is far from an ideal way to approach things, neither is being a knee-jerk contrarian. This is my video the last time I made it. This is my video about conformity, and I made this claim exactly, right, despite not knowing what reactance is, that conformity is this thing of where you conform to societal norms. Anti-conformity is where you reject them. So we should be non-conformists, somebody who critically thinks about the world around them and actively tries to change it, right? Joe, this is a speaking medium, so please react with your voice.
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this one, we can think of a few things that happen in our vegan outreach where I think I've heard people say, I'm going to eat twice the meat just so you don't make a difference, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's a pretty common one. And then, yeah, I think with your conformity video, I think we agree that you probably want some middle ground of like intellectual humility, where if your preconceived notions are questioned, you shouldn't do a knee-jerk, no, that's definitely, I'm definitely right. And then obviously conforming is also not the heuristic you should follow. So just kind of looking into each stance as it comes up with humility and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and does anybody in the chat have good other examples rather than I'd eat twice as much meat kind of situation? The reason some people will never quit their addictions. Well, I don't know if that's the reasons. I don't know if that's the reactance, right? I don't know if somebody being told that they're addicted would necessarily put them deeper in addiction. Addiction is kind of a different thing. It's a chemical thing. I know because I was addicted to quite a few things in my life. So I don't know.
Yeah,
about
I'm just
that.
thinking through,
Yeah.
as a parent of 2 young children, they do, at least my younger one does this on the daily, multiple times. Just you give an instruction, they do the opposite, and sometimes you try reverse psychology, and then they'll actually do what you want, which is kind of funny. Yeah, it's almost like a childlike behavior, this kind of like knee-jerk reaction.
Oh, Justin, what's up?
Justin
Justin
says,
says,
like a 3-year-old.
Oh, yeah. It's really annoying. I have like kids outside that usually like play soccer and shit like that. And when somebody of the neighbors tell them, just be quiet, because they scream out of their lungs, like, and it's like 20 children just fucking screaming. They scream even harder when being like asked to be quiet. Justin says reactance is legit one of the most annoying things to run into. One reason why steamrolling people and talking too much in outreach is suboptimal. Justin, if you want to join in, you know where we are. You're welcome. You're welcome here. No pressure though, if you're like busy or whatever. Yeah. I'm trying to see if anybody gave another example. Authority can be your own bias and cultural conditions, or what else? No shopping versus TV bad humans. Okay. Even worse, when you try to reverse psychology, that doesn't work either because it's too obvious then. Well, I saw some people do reverse psychology pretty well. Like, I think Joey's reverse psychology really worked when he was doing it for a while. Should we move on?
Yeah, I want to think on what.
Yeah, go on.
I want to think on what Justin said there. Justin, were you referring to the vegan outreacher falling for reactance, like trying to jump back on every claim?
No, I think he's saying that steamrolling the person, the carnist you're talking to, is not gonna. It's gonna get you reactance. I think that's what he's saying. All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. Let's. Yeah. What VTM said. Let's move on. The curse of knowledge. Give us an overview, Joe.
All right, I'll read it off your screen so it matches up and we don't get confused.
Sure.
So this one is probably my favorite we're going through today. It's really good to keep in mind, especially if you're teaching people stuff and when you're trying to explain concepts. So essentially, it's once you understand something, you presume it to be obvious to everyone. Things make sense once they make sense. So it can be hard to remember why they didn't. We build complex networks of understanding and forget how intricate the path of our available knowledge really is. The bias is closely related to the hindsight bias, wherein you will tend to believe that an event was predictable all along once it has occurred. We have difficulty reconstructing our own prior mental states of confusion and ignorance once we have clear knowledge. When teaching someone something new, go slow and explain it like they're 10 years old without being patronizing. Repeat key points and facilitate active practice to help embed knowledge.
Yeah. So this is a bias that vegans are guilty of quite often. We kind of, the second we go vegan, we kind of forget that we used to not be vegan. We used to not know that exploiting animals is immoral, right? So, exit one sec.
Yeah, I think we all had that overnight vegan click in the brain. It's like, I have to go tell everyone, this is going to make so much sense. I can explain it so easily. And then you're just like, what? Fuck. why is no one getting this?
Yeah. And when we do activism,
yeah,
like online or something like that, we also are kind of doing this. We're kind of, well, it's because they're sentient. I do this all the time. I have to stop doing it. It's because they're sentient. Most people don't know what the word sentient means. So I definitely should stop doing that. Go on.
Yeah, and I think this is just good to know I've run into this in my professional career even, just, you have a concept and it makes perfect sense to you, and there's someone younger you're training, or you just have to try and remember what it was like to not know and try to enter that past self. And that's kind of been my strategy for overcoming this bias, is just, okay, when I was 20 years old and I didn't know this, what did it feel like, or what was my brain like? And it's hard to do that, but then you can kind of remember, oh yeah, I went to college for 4 years and I had to like take training and all this stuff before I can even like get to where I am. So it's
Yeah.
good to, and then there's just like so many interconnected parts and neuron connections in your brain to get to that final state where you understand a concept. And
Yeah.
yeah, the vegan one is so rough, especially when you're talking to family and stuff. And yeah, it's just like, how do you not get it?
Yeah, true. So Jeremy gives us a bit of a note, not only forget, but create false versions of our own histories. So is it part of this to like rewrite your own history once you have the curse of knowledge, like, to say like, oh, I always knew that, or something like that?
I could see that. Yeah, and we all know like memory is complete shit, and that's been proven empirically, like with um, courtroom testimonies, and that I'm sure you've probably looked into some of that,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
just like the human memory is so fallible, and yeah, so you might remember a false version of yourself that was always this uber genius, logic brained person, but in reality, I was a little baby and I didn't know I didn't know anything.
I kind of also always, not always, I guess I can't say always, but in some instances I make the assumption that I was a total shithead way back before I knew anything. But once in a while I probably do have like the rewriting of history kind of situation. But my assumption is I was a dumbass, I'm still a dumbass, but I'm a dumbass under construction kind of situation.
That's probably a better way to go, because then you just, when you're actually correct, you can feel a little humility versus like assuming you were correct the whole time. And
Yeah, I suppose. We're kind of flying through these ones. Joe, maybe get some more cards. Huh?
yeah,
That's good.
we can maybe hit some fallacies too if we have more time, because this website, these are just the cognitive biases. There's 24 fallacies as well,
Awesome.
so we could.
But let's start with this one. Let's continue with this one. Groupthink. You let the social dynamics of a group situation override the best outcomes. Let me just make it a little bigger for everybody. You let the social dynamics of a group situation override the best outcomes. Dissent can be uncomfortable and dangerous to one's social standing. True, if you don't conform, you get ostracized. And so often the most confident or first voice will determine group decisions. Because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which we are going to talk about in a minute, the most confident voices are also often the most ignorant. Rather than openly contradicting others, seek to facilitate objective means of evaluation and critical thinking practices as a group activity. This is actually a good advice in the end. Whenever I find myself in a situation of a very loud voice, I just ask for evidence, or ask how did they reach that conclusion. I think that's a good thing. I don't assume that they're wrong, even if I know that they're wrong. That doesn't work with me on Discord though. On Discord I sometimes scream at people, "You're wrong, motherfucker." Anyways.
Discord's people are, I don't know if it's like the anonymous mask or something. People just go deranged on there.
Yeah.
I feel like if you meet that same person IRL, they would be super nice, and then on Discord they're
That would still be wrong though, so.
Yes, true.
I don't know. I don't think the internet makes people more wrong, or something like that. What do you have to say to add about groupthink, Joe?
I think you hit it pretty good. I think the most difficult one is definitely the social standing that makes you uncomfortable to speak against the group.
Yeah.
And be an outcast. And I think we've all experienced that from time to time.
Yeah.
That's why we
it's
seek
one
out
of
these
those
communities. Yeah, that's why we seek out these communities where we're with like-minded individuals, because in your other social circles it can feel... Oh, looks like Justin joined us.
Yeah. Sup, Justin?
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, pretty good. You sound
Oh,
no,
my,
you sound like kind of muffled. You okay?
do I? I sound weird?
Oh no. So now you sound good. Yeah.
Okay.
Before
All
it
right.
was muffled.
Huh, it's not pulling up my video for some reason. Sorry, go on. You do your thing. I'll try to figure out why my video is fucked.
Oh no, I would actually love to hear your take on groupthink situation.
Um, hold on. No?
Yeah, I think I
Don't
finished
know.
my train of thought with the
Oh,
um,
sorry. Yeah.
social
No,
standing.
the group thing is interesting. I used to work at a company and they would ask for suggestions and they would bring everyone into a room and be like, okay, like everyone give your suggestions or whatever. And I was like trying to tell them this was a really dumb way to do it because what happens, especially when there's a hierarchy and especially in a corporate setting, whatever like the boss or the highest status person says will anchor the entire conversation. And then everyone will veer towards what they want to do. A really good way to get away from groupthink in those sort of scenarios. So maybe this could apply to like, a vegan organization or an animal rights organization, is to actually solicit, like, get a question and solicit all the feedback anonymously, and then aggregate all the answers in the data. And you tend to get much better answers that way because everyone is giving their true input rather than like an input that is like constantly being like refined and influenced by like the power structures around them. So just as I don't know. There's also some really interesting stuff. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen this where like, if someone like, they'll find like a giant, they'll take a fishbowl and fill it with like marbles or something.
Mm-hmm.
And any one person is terrible at guessing the number of marbles. But if you ask like 1,000 people independently the number of marbles, and then you average out that number, they're almost always like right on. And it's really weird because it applies to a lot of things. Like you can just say like right now, we could say, hey, how many books do you think VPM has in their house? And if we took 1,000 people and had them guess and aggregate their answers, they would almost certainly get it close to right. And so they replicated this finding, and it's very wild. But it's one reason that like groupthink can be detrimental compared to like aggregating a bunch of independent opinions or guesses or things like that.
Yeah, in my case, it would definitely be like two extremes averaged out, maybe, because people who like me would probably guess that I have like a lot of books, and people who dislike me will say none. And actually, it's like very little. I have like maybe 20 books in my house because I can't stand like, I don't know, I don't read books anymore. I read just online stuff. So it's just
Interesting.
like no reason to keep books, I guess.
Yeah, it's always funny. People are like, "What's the last book you read?" I'm like, "It was a blog article about this psychology thing, or like like I was reading this other all this psychology stuff we're looking at right now. I was like reading about all this online, but it wasn't a book. But it was probably
Yeah, I guess people read a lot more
200
short
pages
form
worth
stuff
of reading.
now.
Yeah,
That's
Justin, for
interesting.
whatever reason, when you said that weird finding where when you average out all those things, it reminded me of Benford's law. Totally
Oh, I don't
tangential,
know
but it's just
this.
like another one. It's a really it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but for some reason it just came up in my mind. It's like one of those really, really counterintuitive things that happens in math, where it's more for any random set of numbers, it's more common to have a one at the end, and then it's more common for a two to be at the end than a three, and so on and so forth. And they actually
Oh,
like use
interesting.
Benford's law to um, like check for tax cheats and stuff because like you're gonna have all these random numbers on your tax papers, and there's like an actual distribution that's been proven like with any random set of numbers. And I actually did this in Excel. I just like did equals rand, and it did like a million numbers, and it created the same graph. And it's just like, what the hell? Yeah, it's just a
Oh,
random weird counterintuitive thing.
that's super weird. Math has so many things like that that like are just either very odd or like even smart people can't get their heads around them. Like you ever heard of like the Monty Hall problem?
Yes, that's the
It's
classic probability problem where the game show host has two goats behind two of the doors and a Ferrari behind a third,
yeah, that's it.
and they ask the contestant to guess which door the Ferrari is in, and then the
Yeah.
game show host takes away one of the doors, and the question is, Is it better to switch or keep? And most people intuitively say it doesn't make a difference, but it's actually better to switch the door because it's a 2/3 chance. And it
Yeah.
has to do with the fact that the game show host knows the outcome, which is kind of built into the thought experiment.
Yeah.
And if
Because
the
when
game show host didn't know the outcome, it actually doesn't make a difference. But yeah, the fact that he knew which door the goat was in and took away one of them, you have a 2/3 chance to get the Ferrari if you switch.
Yeah, he takes one door out, knowing that that is not the prize door. So he takes the door out and is like, the prize door is still there, and that knowledge actually like alters the probability of what you should do, which is quite weird. And it's like whenever that first came out, there were like geniuses and even I think some people who were pretty good at math who were arguing against it. They were like, no, you shouldn't switch the door. And then like someone came in and like proved it afterwards. So it was something that was so counterintuitive that even really intelligent people and even people who I think knew math still got it wrong, which is kind of wild to think about. But sorry, that has nothing to do with biases, not really.
Yeah,
anyway.
random stuff that comes up that I like. I love counterintuitive type things like that. The best way that Monty Hall I get to click for people is to use the 100 doors, and
Yes.
then the game show host removes 98 of the doors, and then it kind of like clicks that it's like obvious, like, oh yeah, you should switch because, it's probably it's like
Yeah.
probably in the other door. It's like a 98% chance.
Yep.
The person who's switching or not switching is probably making some kind of a fallacy there. When they stick, right? They make not only the
Right,
Monty
yes.
fallacy, they probably make some kind of like an assumption that they are right.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the people definitely were quite confident, I would say. Like, because there's this intuitive thing when it feels intuitively right, like you start to almost get upset. You're like, no, like this can't be. Like, because I remember when I first read it, I was like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. And me and my girlfriend, we were both sitting there like puzzling over it. And so what we did, we actually did the experiment. So we like wrote on a piece of paper, we like ran it as if there were like 3 doors, and I would like take it away and she would switch. And we ran it like 10 or 20 times to see what happened. And sure enough, whenever she would switch, she was right a much higher percentage of the time than when she wouldn't. And we were like, oh, okay. So like it genuinely works, like the experiment.
I remember my college professor, my probability professor, she actually created MATLAB code to show the class that, she just like ran it, the problem, and
interesting.
yeah, it just creates a 1/3, 2/3 graph.
That's awesome.
Like running it thousands of times in a computer simulation. And it was like, okay, so it's real.
Yeah, that's funny. That's pretty cool.
All right. The next one is the backfire effect. Joe, you want to read it out?
Sure. So you'll notice that this one's kind of similar to reactance, but there's some small nuance. So I'll read it out and we can talk about it. So the backfire effect is when some aspect of your core belief is challenged. It can cause you to believe even more strongly. We can experience being wrong about some ideas as an attack upon our very selves or our tribal identity. This can lead to motivated reasoning, which causes a reinforcement of beliefs, despite disconfirming evidence. Recent research shows that the backfire effect certainly doesn't happen all the time. Most people will accept a correction relating to specific facts. However, the backfire effect may reinforce a related or parent belief as people attempt to reconcile a new narrative in their understanding. And they have a Mark Twain quote at the end. It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that ain't so.
Yeah.
Or that just ain't so.
It kind of reminds me the research I did on cognitive dissonance. What's up, Justin?
Can you see me now?
Yeah, we can see you now.
Okay,
So,
fuck, I got it on my thing somewhere. Sorry.
So cognitive dissonance actually made the point about this when your belief is so strong that it's actually like sometimes one of your beliefs is so strong that it's so impermeable, like resistant to change, it actually makes you go in the other direction. And the example they gave is actually from the research that they did, the study they did on like people who are like in doomsday cults. And when like they have the prophets saying, "Oh, this doomsday is coming on this date," and when the date comes and there is no doomsday, some of the people obviously change their mind and say, "Oh, holy shit, this was wrong. Therefore, I probably should go in the other direction," right? But other people who are in doomsday calls, they just like buckle up and double down on their belief that a doomsday is coming, and they'll say something like, "Well, we prayed hard enough and then we did all these deeds, so we prevented doomsday," right? Kind of situation like that. So they start coping about it in a way that is like a little ridiculous.
So that reminds me of, I know that you're a fan of Professor Dave, VPM, and I'm sure you're aware of that whole Antarctica meme that was recent.
Yeah.
So they sent a bunch of flat
the final, what was it? Holy shit. I was watching it live.
Or something?
The final experiment, right? TFE.
Yeah, so if you guys aren't aware, they sent a bunch of flat earthers down to Antarctica to basically just show them with their own eyes that 24-hour sun exists in Antarctica, because their flat earth model, that would be impossible.
Yeah.
And then there's all these flat earthers online that are still coping, saying it was fake, or they like moved the goalposts, so like made their reasoning their faulty reasoning even stronger. And then some of them were claiming that like they filmed it inside of a giant football stadium or something, just like insane stuff.
Yeah. Justin, you probably have a lot to talk about the backfire effect when it comes to outreach, vegan outreach, right?
Yeah, so something interesting here is that, and I think they mentioned it there, but the backfire effect originally was thought to be like a very strong thing that happened a lot. But it turns out that the original research was kind of done in a way that was sketchy. Mm-hmm. And so they went and looked at it afterwards. And it turned out the effect was not as strong as it seemed. And so I think that it's a really convoluted.
The sleeper effect is
no.
Okay.
No, not the sleeper effect. So they went back and looked at it, and it turned out it was like, I think the person had like overstated the case to make splashy headlines or something like that, like where the data came from. And so when they looked at it again, it's actually, you don't have to be as worried about it as you might think. It doesn't tend to be the case that people will dig their heels in and necessarily believe a thing harder, but they just don't tend to actually change their mind. So what will happen is that their belief will change oftentimes, but their attitude won't. So they might think like, yes, that person's right, but their attitude towards whatever that is doesn't change. So there's sort of, when you think about psychology and like behavior and beliefs, there's like this three-pronged thing. And so sorry, I'm literally holding my camera right now because I can't find a place to put this like little camera I have because my other one's not working. But there's three things, and one is belief, attitude, and behavior. Mm-hmm. So belief is obviously just abstractly what you say the thing is. Like, I believe apples are red. And then a behavior would be like you eating the apples. And then an attitude is more kind of like your vibe towards it, like towards that belief. So like apples are red doesn't have much of a vibe, but maybe like you have a vibe towards something you think about, like the trans community, for instance. Right, like you might believe something. Someone might be able to convince you of something that you didn't believe before. But like someone who's transphobic might still have like a sort of icky vibe towards trans people. You know what I mean? Or a bad attitude towards trans people, even if they've been like proven wrong about something and they explicitly believe something else.
I think you are. Sorry, I know a different kind of thing about an attitude. I don't think it's just a vibe. I think it's the moral question, actually. People believing, okay, there is the belief, yes. The attitude is more of a, well, this is what I should do. It's more of a normative ethic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it can be, but it's. I don't know how clearly it's fine. We can look it up, but it's somewhere. It falls somewhere between the explicit, like just purely abstract belief, and the like I'm actually doing a thing. Because when I think about veganism, I think like people will be like, yeah, you guys are right. Like I've gotten that a lot. Like, look, I mean, you're totally right, but I'm not going to change. You know what I mean? And so they're clearly not changing their behavior. But the question is like, how far did we get them on the attitude? Like, we definitely want them to change their belief. That's like the very first step. But then it's not enough. Just because they agree with us doesn't mean they're going to go vegan. It doesn't mean they're going to stop exploiting animals. And so it's like the behavior is like the final step, but there's something in between there, some like feeling about the thing. Like, I really, really do feel this is bad. I don't just think it's bad. I can like feel it in my bones that it's bad. And that's what kind of drives that behavior change.
Yeah, welfareism is kind of like that. Sorry, Justin. People believe it's okay to, like, it's not okay. People don't really believe, I think, it's not okay to exploit and maim whatever animals, right? They definitely don't do that with their actions, but they think, well, we should give them better lives, kind of situation. That's the vibe, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah. I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, go on.
And so, yeah, it's just to make the point that those things are not all the same. Because people are like, well, I convinced you that veganism was correct, so why aren't you vegan? It's like, because there's like multiple layers here. And my point there was just to say that the backfire effect, the findings, you have to disentangle belief from attitude and behavior to totally figure out what's the deal with the backfire effect. And I can't remember it now because it's been a while, but I can find an article and send it to you guys if you want.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Joe, any final words on the backfire effect?
Yeah, I was at a conference for my job earlier this year, and one of the speakers made the point that you have to change beliefs before. I think he actually used those three words: those belief, attitude, and behavior. And he was probably looking at the same research you're citing.
Well, all research has that about like the process of change. All research talks about that, like the process of change,
so
the cognitive dissonance, all of it. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Belief. You have to change your beliefs first to then change your attitude, which then the behavior is the final step. And what he was talking about wasn't to do with veganism. It was about transportation systems and trying to change people's behaviors to, like, car share and ride their bikes more and take public transit and that sort of stuff. Yeah. Changing everyone doesn't even have, at least in the United States, people just don't even have that belief. They're like, I'm going to ride my single occupant Ford F-150. That's my belief. That's my right, and I'm going to do it. They don't even have they see a guy on a bike and they're like, freaking hippie.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he was talking about like, how do we even like enact meaningful policy change to have more accessible infrastructure, and we have to. Like, the only way to do it is to get people to change their beliefs first and foremost, and people aren't even going to vote for these changes because they love their 6-lane arterial roads at 45 miles an hour with Ford F-150s, and that's the norm right now.
Pretty much. On a somewhat related note, I recently got an e-bike, and I fucking love it. Anyone who's thinking about getting an e-bike, or a bike in general, but the e-bike is fantastic. My favorite thing that I've gotten all year.
It's kind of scary though. So the thing about the backfire, like about attitudes that I wanted to mention in regarding veganism, is the attitudes of people towards lab-grown meat. I think it's like that's the attitude, right? They believe they should or want to eat meat. Their action is to want and eat meat. But their attitudes toward animals is sometimes like conflicted, right? And so lab-grown meat kind of plugs that hole, hopefully. And therefore, the research that we see on acceptance of lab-grown meat like shows like huge numbers, like 60% are gonna be like adherent to buying lab-grown meat, kind of situation. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think once it's on the grocery shelves and in the restaurants and people just try it and they're like, oh, it's the same, then they'll just switch. And then once the price is the same, probably it's going to be a price, and just I think it's just going to be like they have to just try it once, like, oh, it's out now, we're going to try lab-grown chicken, and then they're like, oh, this is the same, okay, I'll just start buying that because obviously chickens aren't getting massacred.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think.
Go on.
So I just want to make a point about lab-grown meat and plant meat in general. I think one thing to look at too is, and I think some places have pointed this out, like, look at what the industry is trying to combat. like, look how hard industry and politicians are trying to combat a thing, and that's probably a decent heuristic for like what thing is going to be a game changer. And at least for plant-based meat, like the amount of money that went into this idea that ultra processed foods are super bad for you, like plant-based burgers, so much disinformation, so much money poured into that. And now recently, at least in the US, with plant-based meat, or sorry, with
lab-grown,
cell-grown meat or whatever, lab-grown, like tons of states have banned it, like legitimately. And these are like conservative, like allegedly free market to the max, like just let the market decide what's, and they've banned it before it's even, a thing, killed it in the crib, so to speak. And it's just like, it's so wild because, yeah, I don't know. It's just a good heuristic, I think, to show like what is really threatening them. And also, of course, just to like call them on their hypocrisy on one other fucking thing. So anyway,
Justin, 100%. I made this exact point when I did a video, when I did a live stream, actually making my case for lab-grown meat to my audience who's vegan. And I think, I hope I convinced a few people to adopt it even better. And that was one of my, not main points, but like more of a feeling type point that I made, and less of a empirical point, that if you see the animal agriculture industry hating on this thing so much, we should probably support that thing. We should probably do it.
Yeah.
All right. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Justin, you want to read it? Can you read it, or should I?
No, I can't actually see the screen for some reason. It's like frozen.
No worries. I'll read it. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is one of my favorite things. It's very visible almost always. The more you know, the less confident you're likely to be, because experts know just how much they don't know. They tend to underestimate their ability. But it's easy to be overconfident when you have only a simple idea of how things are. Try not to mistake the cautiousness of experts as a lack of understanding, nor to give much credence to lay people who appear confident but have only superficial knowledge. I would add not only superficial knowledge, but purposefully adjusted knowledge, like quacks. They talk in simple terms, but what they're saying is with confidence, but what they're saying is just straight up wrong. The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are so certain of themselves, yet wiser people so full of doubt, says Bertrand Russell.
Yeah, famous philosopher.
All right. Joe?
Famous vegan-ish philosopher. I'm sure he wasn't vegan. He's from forever ago.
Oh, was he veganish? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's the one who said it matters not if they lack or it matters not if they're intelligent. It matters not if they have reason. It matters if they suffer. I think was.
Oh,
like
I thought that was Jeremy Bentham.
Oh, was that Bentham? Okay.
I think that was Bentham. Because he's like a hardcore utilitarian. That's like that's giving big utilitarian vibes. That quote. I think it was Bentham, but I could be wrong.
I probably have it mixed up. This is another one that I think anyone who's been in like professional career has run into this. The person who just got hired thinks they know it all, and all the seasoned veterans in the office, we're always like, please check my work. Please check my work. Find something wrong with it. I don't want this to be wrong. And then, like, I'm an engineer, just like the 1 or 2 year out of school engineer thinks they know everything. They just like got out of college and they're hot shit. If you want to pull up the little graph I sent you, I just love, I think most people have heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, have seen this graph, but basically confidence is on the y-axis and your competence is on the x. And I just love that term, Mount Stupid. Is like this person thinks they know it all. They just read they saw a YouTube video on some topic and now they're like an expert on XYZ, on like some like political affair, or they're at the peak of Mount Stupid. And then when you actually like dive into these complex things like politics or history, or in my case engineering, you realize really quickly what you don't know. You're like, oh shit, I don't know anything. And that's the valley of despair there. And then slowly over time, as you get more competent in your subject matter, you actually do get confidence and are kind of like the guru, is what it's calling it there in the bottom right. But I just love that they call it Mount Stupid on the little graph. It just always makes me giggle.
Yeah, when it comes to politics, I kind of resigned to being in the valley of despair for the rest of my life because I'm just not willing to bother to actually learn what's going on there. Just happens to be somewhere I resign now. Anything related outreach, Justin, when it comes to Dunning-Kruger effect? How to deal with it, I guess. Yeah, go.
I did just want to say something. Someone in the chat, Jeremy Gord, is making a case about, he says, is belief more often the first or last step? Just going back to our belief, attitude, behavior thing. I do want to address something here because it is more complex than how I said it earlier. What I was talking about there is like in the current society, when someone has is not a vegan, the first thing we have to convince them of, we have to kind of start with, we don't necessarily have to start with, but one of the things we want to start with is idea, so that the idea is clear why veganism is the thing. Because if you have absolutely no conceptual grounding, it's kind of weird to then change your behavior based on no conceptual grounding. But what Jeremy is maybe pointing out here is that it used to be thought that this is just a unidirectional thing. So we go from belief to attitude to behavior. But we now know that this is like a circle. So the way you behave affects your attitudes and beliefs. And I promise you guys I would send you these studies and I didn't, so I'm sorry. But there are studies showing that like if someone eats an animal, right, or body parts of an animal, so they looked at people who like ate apples and then ate like beef jerky. And they asked them questions about animals. And the people who had recently eaten beef jerky gave a lot of lower ratings to the animals as far as like, could they feel pain? Are they sentient? Even I think maybe are they intelligent? But across a bunch of different metrics, they just like valued them less and saw them as having lesser abilities. And so also just to note, that's like a very specific vegan example, but this is something that is like all throughout psychological research, the idea that behaviors and beliefs are this sort of circle that mutually reinforce and influence each other. And so I think that's one reason why like showing videos in outreach, I think is so important and such a good thing to do. Because the videos just attack the attitudes very directly rather than attacking the belief. And so I think when you get that like 1-2 punch of like the sort of rational argument against the belief, and then the more emotive argument or the more emotive case aimed at the attitude, that's what I think is really powerful. And that's what I think is going to get you the highest chance of getting a behavior change.
Yeah, the video attacks the just world hypothesis, doesn't it? Circle back to the beginning of this. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Justin, back to the transportation example, the behavior affecting your attitude is like in America, we have all these like suburban plats, single zoned residential, and that's just where everyone grew up. And they all have the behavior just kind of indoctrinated into them based on where they live. And, you know, they, as like growing up as teenagers, I'm not sure where you grew up, but yeah, we just all grew up in like car dependent areas in America. And we
100%.
all had those behaviors bestowed upon us against our will. And then that formed the belief that this is, so yeah, it's kind of like that behavior. Same with meat eating, I guess. It's like we all grew up eating meat as a carnist, and that affected our belief structure.
Yeah,
100%.
I'm super interested to see that research that you have, because it almost is kind of like a pragmatic. It wouldn't be a principled stance against veganism, but it would be like an empirical stance against veganism of like if people are eating like dumpster dived meat or leftover, or you're like absolutely sure it's not gonna. Yeah, it's not going to cause a demand. Like, who are we to be so high and mighty that we're not going to fall prey to this kind of cognitive mechanism of your behavior changing your beliefs?
So this is the foundation of my objection to veganism, is basically based in that broader psychological literature, and then buttressed by the specific psychological literature that actually looks at as it applies to animals. I don't think it's a top of the pile problem, freeganism exactly, but if you press me on it, like, do I think we should do freeganism? I would say no generally.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I think
no,
it's
for that reason,
like
for that exact reason.
yeah, like principally in a vacuum, I don't have a problem with it. But yeah, if there's the really strong empirics to show that that is what happens, and then yeah, I'm not going to be like myself. I'm not going to be free of that happening. I like obviously
Yes.
yeah. That's
And
what's
that's
to recognize when you see these mechanisms is like I'm not above. I have the same brain of the people they studied, so
100%. And that itself is a bias. I forget what fuck man, I haven't said my biases in a while, but there's a bias where everyone thinks they're not average, basically. Uh,
yeah.
but of course,
I'm
mathematically, this is kind of tough to be true. That this could be true of everyone.
I'm forgetting what that one's called, but I can pull it up and I can link it to you real quick.
Yeah, go on.
When I remember the name of it. You guys can keep talking.
I actually want to propose to everybody to prove their belief, attitude, action chain to themselves and back. I agree that it loops back as well, Justin, on something very simple. But once you do that simple thing, you might actually find yourself like understanding the mechanism much more and maybe being able to explain it to other people as well. Washing dishes. I know Brian is in the chat and he complained about not, it was somebody else. I think somebody else in my server was complaining about hating doing dishes. Here's the thing, right? If you have a dish in your hand, if you hate washing dishes, if you have a dish in your hand, go immediately and wash it. Once you have it in your hand, do it for 3 weeks and it stops being a chore. You're going to change your attitude towards washing dishes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, you can try it out, right? It's going to be hard at first. It's going to be like, because you're basically acting against your attitudes at first, but you're making sure you're doing it, right? And then your attitude changes as well.
So I linked it in the chat on Discord, and it's not exactly what we were getting at, but it's kind of similar. It's called the fundamental attribution error. But basically, you judge others on their character, but yourself on the situation. It's not exactly what we were getting at before, but I think this is the most similar one on this website, at least.
Well, let me read it out anyways. Yeah, go on.
There's a slightly different one I was talking about, but that is also a very interesting one.
Let me read it out first. So, fundamental attribution error. You judge others on their character, but yourself on the situation. So that's interesting. If you haven't had a good night's sleep, you know why you are being a bit slow. But if you observe someone else being slow, you don't have such knowledge. And so you might presume them to just be a slow person. Because of this disparity in knowledge, we often emphasize the influence of circumstance for our own failing, as well as understanding circumstantial factors to explain other people's problems. And then it says, it's not only kind to view other situations with charity, yeah, I agree, it's more objective too. Be mindful to also err on the side of taking personal responsibility rather than justifying and blaming. Interesting. Justin, you want to add?
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing. Part of this, they think, is actually like an emotional response. So, do I want to keep getting political? I don't know. But like, so in America, like oftentimes there is a kind of like bifurcation on what people think about like homelessness. And how people address it. And so some people will say like, well, that's that person's problem. They just need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Obviously, they're like, there's something wrong with them, right? And other people will say, well, it's the situation that has kind of led them there, and that's really the problem. And one thing about this is, if you are an individual and you see a homeless person, right, and you say, wow, that's scary. I hope I'm never in a position where I don't have a home. It's easier for you emotionally to think that that's because of something inherent to them, because you can be like, well, it's not inherent to me. It's scarier to think that the system is responsible for that, because that makes you vulnerable to this fate that you don't want to have befall you. And so they think that there is this sort of like self-protective mechanism that goes into what ends up being in many cases a kind of like hateful ideology often. And so it's this classic case of like, I think this was in Star Wars or whatever, but there's some truth to it where like fear will lead you to hate. So that fear of your own security, a way that you deal with that is by like demonizing the other.
Yeah.
Because you tell yourself, I don't ever want to become the other, so I need to tell myself a story about why I'm safe from becoming the other.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's.
I think Yoda.
I think it's the mechanism behind empathy, basically, or lack thereof, right? Could be.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that too. It's like where you can't get in their head, because getting in their head is dangerous for you. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain vulnerability to empathy, because to empathize means to feel that pain, and feeling that pain is uncomfortable. If you're someone who's so uncomfortable with feeling pain, even in a sort of indirect way, then your ability to empathize and have compassion and put yourself in another person's shoes is going to be like greatly diminished.
Joe, sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it was Yoda. He said, "Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering."
Yep.
Okay, now we're
Yeah, it was
movies.
before Justin got on. I think that goes full circle back to the first just world fallacy, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine victims and being in their circumstance.
Yep.
And bad things happen to good people.
All right.
A lot of these are connected for sure.
I think a lot of them also are connected. As someone who used to be like, I wouldn't say like a hater of personal therapy, but at least like a skeptic, and now someone who does therapy, I will tell you that this ability to engage with your emotions in a less pathological way, and to be able to recognize your emotions, name your emotions, and sit with your emotions, that in itself does a lot of work of disarming a broad range of these fallacies, kind of like how we're like connecting these all together. Like many of them are based on fear at the bottom. Fear of something bad happening to you, fear of being expelled from your group in some way. This is a really common one. Like the most sort of fundamental fear we have besides death is like getting kicked out of our group, like our group not liking us anymore. And so like once you start to recognize that, like a lot of these just feed into that. Groupthink feeds into it, just world feeds into it, fundamental attribution error. It's like you find this common root, and it's not necessarily a purely logical one, it's an emotional one. And if you can't engage in a real way with that emotion, it makes it a little harder, I think, to see these in an intuitive way. Obviously we can kind of bootstrap it conceptually or whatever, but yeah. Anyway, that's my
Yeah.
go to therapy, everyone. If you can afford it or you have health insurance. If you live in the US, probably don't, because it'll bankrupt you, but
I'm lucky my insurance just covers it all for free, but I have good insurance.
I don't go to
but yeah,
therapy,
my,
the one time I did, I'm pretty sure I was exploited.
no.
Yeah, pretty sure I was
That
conned.
sounds awful.
So I have like personal negative attitudes towards therapy, but I understand why other people do. Sorry, go on, Joe. I apologize.
Yeah, the one, like going back to the emotions that you're talking about from Therapy Brain is the really important one I recognize. I don't know if you use the same semantic as she called it, an emotional arc. And when you realize that you're going through something, it's called an emotional arc is what you called it. Like you like ride this wave and you always come out the other end. It's going to take a different amount of time for each situation. But when you recognize that you're in one and that you're like, you have to like think of mechanisms to calm yourself down, or like, okay, I'm emotional right now. I'm in an emotional arc. I will come out the other end. I will be okay because I'm like in the arc, or like I'm in the wave. And you'll always come out the other end, like no matter what happens. Like your mom died is like the craziest scenario. Like you will come out the other end. And Yeah, and it could be like a debate or like outreach like you're doing. You can probably recognize that people enter into these like little emotional arcs during outreach that you've done,
Mhm.
and like they might like stop using logic or reason because they're just getting emotional, and it's probably good to recognize that for other people, not just for yourself. And maybe it's like prudent for the outreacher to I don't even know, like calm down the convo or something, or get it less heated, because yeah, just getting recognizing that you're in this emotional arc can lead you to better outcomes for rationality.
100%. I think so. What we touch on more that's we touch on something similar. Like for me, we touch on like cycles. Like I will get in thought pattern cycles that are hard for me to break out of. And these often involve, you probably won't be surprised by this, often involve like hypothetical arguments in my own mind, where I will like if something triggers me, I can be walking around my house, I can be doing chores, I can be feeding my dogs, and I will essentially like black out for like an hour or two, just having an argument in my head, and it'll be like I don't remember like basically what was happening, and I'll have lost like an hour and a half of time. I'll have done stuff, I'll have been productive, but it'll just be like I'll come out and I'll be like, oh my God, I was just arguing in my head for the past hour and a half.
Whoa.
And yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going through every single iteration, every single thing the person could say, everything I could say back. Do I have papers to that? Can I like da da da? Um,
I mean, I do
and
that
that's
as
the
well, but I don't lose time. I do that as well.
so like part of my therapy was like learning, oh, to recognize that in the moment and to be able to like break out of that and not be like in this like sort of like hyper vigilant over anxiety like state or whatever. But something that a framework that I've been using that I think is really helpful is to think of you actually have compassion for your negative emotions. So like if you're feeling scared or anxious or angry, rather than necessarily just like trying to not be scared or anxious or angry, you kind of go back to like why they're there. And most of these emotions are there to like protect you, or they protected you at some point. Oftentimes they protected you when you were younger, but they're not serving that purpose now. So you kind of meet them in a way that's like, okay, I understand that you're there to protect me. And I understand why you worked in the past, right? Because like my parents were insane, right? They were just like massive alcoholics who, and my mom in particular, just argued with me constantly. And it's like, oh, okay, the reason I'm getting stuck in this is because this was a protective thing for me to use when I was a kid, right? And so in recognizing that, I can see like, okay, I'm compassionate towards this emotion, but I'm not going to be ruled by it, right? I'm not going to let it take me over. And so I can kind of have this sort of like live in this sort of like double think of like appreciating it while understanding its limitations. And I think in outreach, you can very much see when someone goes into that protective state. So when they're getting angry or they start like, saying some really dumb shit that normally they wouldn't say. Yeah, I think if you can understand that that's them trying to protect themselves in some way, I think that can give you a little more empathy towards them and can allow you to slow the conversation down in whatever way is appropriate. Like, because we could talk about like, oh, if you need to slow the conversation down, do these 3 steps. These 3 tricks will like get you there. But oftentimes your own mindset is going to give you a better intuitive answer that's appropriate for the moment. And so these 3 simple tricks, those are always good. But if you can actually embody the type of mindset that would like allow you to empathize with them, I think that's better. But it's harder to do. So that's how I think that would relate to.
Can you give us like a strategy, Justin, to get them out of this state?
Yeah.
What would that be? How do you like actually verbally get them out of it?
Oh, I thought you were saying you were going to give a strategy.
No, I'm asking you. You're
okay.
the fucking expert, Justin.
I know, I got to think of something. Okay, so I think it does depend probably on the situation. Sometimes what I do is whenever I start seeing them making objections, and I watched another person do this recently, if they start making really dumb objections, I sometimes will actually ignore the objection. And not in like a patronizing way, like they'll be like, well, and we've done it for a long time and it just tastes good and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I guess what I keep thinking about is whenever this animal is and I kind of like talk about the animal, and I don't, because they're in protection mode. And if I go on the attack in that moment, they're going to be like, I need to get more protective, right? Their shield's up. And if I slash at their shield, they're going to like put it up more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just got to debunk the dumb shit they're saying, right? But other times it is smarter to just kind of keep like bringing it back to the animal, bringing it back to a story, you know what I mean? Bring it back to the victims, or even tell a story about yourself. Like when they say that about like, oh, it tastes good and like we've been doing it for a while, you know, you could just like debunk them, or you could say, what I often say is like, yeah, like I get that because, you know, I wasn't vegan for 33 years of my life. So I like, you know, I grew up doing hot dogs and hamburgers with my dad. I say that a lot to people. You know, I really liked all that stuff. I guess what I was thinking about though is, you know, someone brought it up to me, like, is just because we've done something for a long time, does that make it okay? Or just, you know, was that a good enough justification to put a pig in a gas chamber, you know? And so rather than like, I'm giving them all the tools and all the debunking they need, but I'm not like firing it right into their heart. I'm like telling it through my own story a little bit. And so sometimes I think that can help. Not always. Of course, some people are just going to be super defensive. But like,
100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to end, I think. Joe, what do you think?
I think that's great, and I'm looking into getting to IRL outreach sooner than later, and this is amazing advice to hear.
Yeah, I think we can bully Joe into starting the channel. So, you know, put one in the chat if you think Joe should start the channel.
Yeah, just shame me into it.
No. We already did this last time, I think, last week. All right, Justin, thank you for coming. Joe, thank you for coming. Everybody, thank you for coming and being in our chat and fighting the carnists. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.